Good morning, everyone. What happens to a candle when it is burning brightly? What happens to a candle when it is burning brightly? It gives us an insight, really, into our encouragement in the gospel today. Before we kind of unfold that, this week we had our first reconciliation and penance, and it was a wonderful time for the children. Really, I think it probably should be called their first experience of confession and penance. See, what we bring to the sacrament is really what we experience. So in other words, for the children, I would say for all of them, none of them have separated themselves from God by a grave sin. They knew it was grave, and they had full possession of their will, and they chose that. If that's the case, then we lose our supernatural capacity for charity. So because we don't have that communion with God, it's communion with God that enables us to love like God loves. And so in that regard, if we bring to confession a grave sin, and we knew it was grave, and we had full possession of our will, we chose that, then there is a reconciliation that needs to happen. Okay, whether that's missing Mass on a Sunday, or taking the Lord's name in vain, or any other grave sin. Okay, when we go to confession, then our relationship with God is restored to it like it was in baptism, and that's a great gift. For the kids there, I don't think they might have maybe they might have missed Mass or whatever, but really it's not their full choice to do that. So they come and they experience a celebration of devotional penance. That is to say, they confess their sins, and what they receive is an increase in sanctifying grace to be able to continue to grow. And it's just a beautiful experience. And then afterwards, we had some snacks here in the back, and so kids were eating the snacks, and I went up to this one little girl, and I noticed that she really wasn't eating, much of anything, and I said, "Aren't you going to have a cookie?" And all she said was, "God bless this Baconator." All right, and I was like, well, I guess she must be going to Wendy's. Yes, there she is, Brooklyn. Very good. So good to see you at church here early in the morning. And but it's just a beautiful experience of this reconciliation and penance, really, and an invitation for us all to experience Christ's embrace. Burning brightly. What happens to a candle when it burns brightly? Well, the candle is spent. It's being spent. And we're encouraged in the gospel that we must allow our light to shine, to burn brightly. And when that happens, we are spending ourselves. Now, we invest our time, our talent, our treasure, but really when we give, we are spending ourselves. And it's good for us to take a step back and realize we have one life, and how are we going to spend it? We have today. How are we going to spend or to give our life? How are we going to burn brightly today? It's good for us to really have not only the saints, but also those practical examples. For myself, when I think of my favorite saint is Saint Damien of Molokai, or very often known as Saint Damien of the Lepers. And there was something just about his life when I was going through college and reading. I happened to be living in Hawaii at the time and got to go to Kalaupapa, the little place. Damien heard of this leper colony, and there was no priest there that was spent any kind of time substantially with them. And there was no one really to ration or distribute the food. Really, the biggest and the strongest, they just took the food, and everybody else, kind of got the scraps. They didn't have adequate housing. The only water was deep in a hollow and with very little sunlight. And Damien wanted to spend himself for them. And he begged his superior and the bishop of Honolulu to allow him to go and to live there with the lepers. And being a farm boy, now his brother also became a priest, and his brother was going to be sent to the missions because his brother was more intelligent. Now, I'm not saying that he lacked intelligence, but obviously he wasn't the most, or else he would have been chosen first. His brother was a bit sickly and was not able to go. And so he took his place, went to the Hawaiian Islands, and there, doing the circuit throughout the islands, learned about the leper colony and wanted to go. And he did. And he used everything that he had, all this knowledge about farming and everything. He built houses for them. He created an aqueduct system that brought the fresh water out into the peninsula. He cared for their wounds. And yes, he shared the love of Jesus Christ, and he spent himself. And eventually he got leprosy, and he died. And he gave it all. A burning brightly, a light that burned so brightly, and he spent himself. We don't take a light and put it under a bushel basket. We put it on a lampstand so that it burns brightly and we can see the glory of God. On a practical sense, I think of my grandparents and how they spent themselves for us. Now, are they perfect? I don't think so. If you want to know their imperfections, ask my mom, okay? Or my uncles or my aunt, and they'll explain how imperfect they were. But I remember running home from school in high school just to get to my grandparents' house so that, they were watching soap operas and talking or whatever, but we would share our day with them, and then we'd talk, and they'd feed us, and, they didn't have a lot of money, but they saved, but then they spent it on us. I remember they took us to Disney World twice in the family truckster. I do remember they had one new car throughout their life, and it was one of those old station wagons, okay? Can you imagine, let's see, Matt, Cindy, me, Sam, Heather, Nan, Pap, and my Aunt Fran. 8 people in that station wagon, 1,000 miles to Disney World. That's spending yourself, okay? The sacrifices that they did. When we would go to visit, sometimes we'd go out to eat. When it came time at the end of their life, there wasn't really any money left. No inheritance for the children or the grandchildren. It was all spent. And I'm not just talking about money here. I'm talking about their lives. And it was spent on us. And it was a time really to relish and to see. One of my favorite memories in church is looking up and seeing my grandfather and him singing full-throated Faith of Our Fathers. Faith and prayer shall win all nations unto thee, and through the truth that comes from God, mankind shall then indeed be free. Faith of our fathers, holy faith, we will be true to thee till death. A shining light that burns brightly. Who are those examples in your life? Who are the saints that you look to? See, first and foremost, our life can only burn brightly when we come to understand how deeply we are loved. Who's helped you to know that you're a son of God, a daughter of God, loved by God? When we're loved, then from within, we want to spend ourselves and to give ourselves in love. What happens to a candle when it burns brightly? It's spent. How are you spending your life? How am I spending my life? There's the question for us today. And the opportunity that we have is today.